Well, good afternoon and a very warm welcome to the ATHENA seminar on fostering linguistic diversity. How can European universities become truly multilingual, organized by the University of Orléans in France with our European partners. So my name is Anne-Friederike de Louis. I'm the Vice Rector for International Relations Europe of the university and also the local coordinator of our ATHENA European University Alliance for Orléans. This seminar takes place online and it is being recorded by our support team. If you don't want to appear in the recording, please keep your camera switched off at all times. This seminar is actually the third in a series called the European University Initiative from European Policy to Practice on the Ground Solutions for Smart Integration. And in this series, we look at topics that we are faced with while we are building and consolidating our alliances in ATHENA as in other networks. Digitalization, the link with our local and regional ecosystems, new forms of mobility and their recognition, and today, linguistic diversity. The seminar series takes place in the context of the successive presidencies of the European Union and with the support of French embassies in several countries for which we are grateful. All countries that follow each other in the presidency of the EU, Portugal in the first half of this year, now Slovenia, then France starting on 1st of January. All these countries are interested in European universities, the flagship initiative of the European higher education area. And each country has a slightly different focus. For the upcoming French presidency, promoting linguistic diversity in Europe is one of the priorities. The European Union has 24 official languages written in 3 different alphabets, and it is estimated that at least 60 more languages are spoken in different regions or by different groups in Europe. The respect of Europe's rich cultural and linguistic diversity is enshrined in the European treaties. And yet only few languages are used when Europeans come together to work in their political institutions or in various projects and initiatives in civil society. And this also holds true for European universities. Our policy brief in these new alliances is to bring together, I quote, a new generation of Europeans who are able to cooperate and work within different European and global cultures in different languages and across borders, sectors, and academic disciplines. Whether we are members of an alliance or not, we generate and transmit knowledge through research and education. And to do it well, we need to access research published in a variety of languages. We need to reach out to our local and international learning communities in languages that they understand, making sure that no one is left behind. Yet in many European projects, the only language that includes everyone is one that hardly anybody speaks as their first language, English. We are fully aware of this paradox that also applies to this seminar. For the time being, we are monolingual when we speak about multilingualism. Surely solutions can be found, and this is one of the aims of this seminar, to share examples from our practice, to learn from each other, to see what can be done to better live up to the ideal of linguistic diversity in our European alliances and projects. The second aim is to work towards policy proposals that we can submit to our institutions, to education authorities, and perhaps even to the European Commission. In the first part of this seminar, we look at linguistic diversity in organizations at different levels. A European university that is a pioneer in multilingualism, EPICUR, then the French-German University, which is an international institution and a large network of universities in Europe. And lastly, a university that has thoroughly internationalized its study programs. And in the second part, our seminar participants will present creative solutions to language learning with examples that range from an institute teaching the local language and permanently adapting its offer to learners' needs, to a bottom-up initiative of students learning languages with native speakers, and an example of intercomprehension in university cooperation, when everyone speaks their own language, but they still all understand each other. As ATHENA is very much focused on digital technology and digital solutions, we then widen the perspective and look at smart solutions to everyday multilingual challenges. The seminar is interactive. Please write your questions in the chat, and we will take them up at the end of each part. So without further ado, let us start with the first part in which we focus on linguistic diversity in organizations. And we are very pleased to welcome our first speaker, Dr. Anouk Tso, a specialist in international relations and politics. I hope I pronounce her surname correctly, probably not. Dr. Tso is currently the Director of International Affairs at the University of Amsterdam, responsible for delivering the university's international strategy and leading the implementation of lines of actions that underpin this strategy in the university. In this role, Dr. Tso is also the coordinator of the participation of the University of Amsterdam in global and European networks, such as the European University EPICUR. Within EPICUR, Anouk is work package leader on multilingualism and inclusive governance. And as an expert on the topic, she also leads a work group on multilingualism for all European university alliances that were selected in 2019. So please, Anouk, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Anne-Frédérique, for this very kind introduction and for the invitation. I would like to start by congratulating ATHENA Alliance with this excellent initiative and this very interesting seminar series. If I would have known about it earlier, I would have attended the previous editions as well. And of course, your decision to include a seminar on linguistic diversity is music to our EPICUR ears. So thank you very much for giving us the opportunity to share some of the EPICUR experiences with this group. I hope that the audience, because I'm imagining that some of the colleagues in the room are also working in the context of alliances, will recognize some of the issues we've encountered, and we would be happy to share with you both on the issue of some of the challenges, but also the solutions we have been able to find. So very much looking forward to this session and the discussion. In the next 10 to 15 minutes, I will tell you briefly about the EPICUR approach to the issue of linguistic diversity and the promotion of multilingualism in the context of inclusive governance. And in particular, I will be showing you our two key achievements to date. And I would acknowledge here also the work of my colleague, Tiffany Boersma, who is also here in the room later on for questions and answers, who contributed greatly to preparing this short presentation. So first of all, I was quite triggered, Anne-Frédérique, by what you were saying just before about the paradox of our commitment to multilingualism in alliances and the fact that we mainly use English as a working language, because the same is very true for EPICUR. We are an alliance comprising 8 partners and very soon 9 actually, from currently 6 different European countries on the continent, none of the countries having English as a national language, but still we use English as a working language to date. That said, EPICUR's key commitments and distinctive features include the development of innovative, interdisciplinary and multilingual approaches to teaching and learning in an academic context, and I will show you what that means to us. And our objective is to create opportunities and mobilities for as many members of our academic communities as possible. So let me now take you back a couple of years ago, 3 years actually to date, when we started drafting our initial pilot application. When we were at the drafting table, we quite soon on already decided to dream big and identify a moonshot, which is EPICUR would like to be the preferred supplier of multilingualism in Europe. It sounds bold, we are quite aware of that, but it also helps to mobilize colleagues and to get work done, so to speak, on achieving our objectives. And this would also be my first advice to any of the alliances here in the room or other university networks. You should dare to be bold and just dream big. And then you will also feel ready to meet the challenge of making multilingualism in an alliance a reality. And why is this important? Well, I'm sure I don't need to convince the audience in this room, but language governance we consider to be key in all walks of university life, especially also for alliances because of the complex context in which we are operating. And then there's also another important institutional commitment that unites the EPICUR partners, and that is that we are convinced that we have a responsibility in Europe to boost both the viability as well as the sustainability of modern language study programs. Because in some cases, we noticed in recent years that the interest of students to enroll full-time in these types of programs in the humanities has been decreasing, unfortunately. And we think it's important to keep those programs alive. And we think that an alliance is the perfect context to be able to do so together. And all of this happened 3 years ago, but actually still today against the backdrop of also a complex political and societal context where many debates were going on in countries like the Netherlands, but also France, on the use of language in academic context. Because as you will all know, many universities continue to introduce more and more programs that are English taught rather than using the local language. And this is a tension that we signal, and we also would like to find ways of overcoming that and uniting the use of different languages in EPICUR. So how are we going about in our alliance in approaching this? Well, very brief, we developed an approach comprising two key elements. The first focuses on developing a mobility strategy specifically catered for European language programs in an interdisciplinary context. And that includes the creation of innovative teaching formats like the learning pathways, but also language training for mobility, tandem training, which is a more informal way of language learning, and research on the incentives amongst young Europeans for learning European languages. Our second strand is the work that we've been carrying out on developing a model language policy for European universities as individual institutions, but also for European university alliances. And we think this is a very important foundation for safeguarding and embedding linguistic diversity, but also inclusive approaches within our universities. And at the moment, we are piloting this language policy model amongst 5 of our EPICUR partners. And we hope that some of the other European university alliances would be interested in learning more about it and experimenting as well. And maybe overall, just a few words on the combination of these two strengths and this approach. You can very clearly see that despite the fact that we were very bold in our ambitions, we combine this ambition with caution here, because we very deliberately chose elements that were feasible to deliver in a 3-year pilot, and also fortunately can provide stepping stones for us in developing our full rollout application that we are currently writing. So that brings me to the first achievement I would like to share with you, and that is the mobility strategy for European languages as it stands today. We are very proud that we came this far, and we think that it's safe to say that in doing so, we brought EPICUR's strategic strength to life. And EPICUR's strategic strength is the combination of our collaborative infrastructure supported by our advanced digital campus, together with shaping new ways for teaching and learning across Europe. What is interesting about our pilot programs that you can see in the blue box on the side is that they're clearly focusing on European languages, which is a very conscious choice. But also within the programs, we offer courses with different languages of instruction. So that also brings the commitment to linguistic diversity to life. What else can be said? There's a lot of educational innovation going on because we developed a specific teaching format, which we call modular learning pathways, allowing students to combine both language learning courses with interdisciplinary courses with a thematic focus on each of the areas. An example is that in our Slavonic languages pilot, students are able to choose between specializations in regions. For example, West Slavonic specialization is a pathway, and also South Slavonic. And we experimented also with different types of pathways in the other pilots. In addition to that, we are experimenting with an idea, and that is to use language, European language, as an enabler for mobility. We are all aware that we are expected to achieve double-digit growth in mobilities within the context of the Alliance, and we do not think that that will be feasible by using English-taught courses only. So for this reason, we are currently offering language training in all 5 EPICUR languages as a preparatory phase to make sure students will have the language proficiency, for example, in Dutch, Modern Greek, or Polish, to be able to participate in future mobilities in the local EPICUR languages. And hopefully this will also be a way to promote European language use in academia at the level of the Alliance. I will say a bit more also about the collaborative infrastructure in one of the next slides. But first I'll take you back because of course the results we achieved did not happen overnight. Well, almost, because they happened quite quickly, but it still took a while to show you a little bit how the build-up worked in the roadmap that we achieved. We started very early on in our project with a very thorough mapping exercise amongst the partners to understand really what the need analysis was for our partnership in terms of working together and creating European added value in European language and culture programs. That mapping exercise resulted in the choice to focus on the 3 languages we chose. So that is Modern Greek, Slavonic languages, and Nordic languages, because that were clearly academic strengths at our partnership, but also there was a clear need in terms of creating more critical mass in some of these programs. We were still very ambitious at the time, and also in a way we were helped by the global health pandemic because the demand for online courses was rising. So we decided to take a risk and organize a spring semester pilot in all 3 programs at the same time, exactly a year ago, and test the running of our offerings on a prototype actually of the digital campus, just to find out whether there would be appetite amongst students to engage in these courses. So 1 year ahead of time, we delivered up to 300% of what we promised to the European Commission, and we could have failed, but we still did it. And fortunately, I'm here today and able to report to you that there was a huge appetite amongst European students because we received hundreds of applications. So building on those experiences, we now moved on to the current academic year, 2021, and we used this year to consolidate the pilots, but also specifically define the mobility strategy for language programs, but also for new teaching formats in a more general way. And the ultimate goal is to create a specific mobility strategy for the European languages and along the way develop flexible and very innovative mobility formats. As I said before, a few words on our EPICUR Inter-University campus, because the development of the content is of course crucial in working together in an alliance, but none of this would be possible in terms of delivering EPICUR courses to the learners without our inter-university campus structure. And as I mentioned before, this is really the cornerstone of EPICUR's strategic strength, because we are able to combine both the function of the entire process of admission and review of applications and communication with the students at the central alliance level, fully digital and paper-free, with a gateway that we created that links together all the individual learning management systems. So that includes, for example, Moodle, Ilias, and Canvas in our case, to a single point of entry. So all the EPICUR students are able, first of all, to apply to any EPICUR mobility using their institutional accounts and experiencing a central review process. And if they are successfully selected, they will be guided on the fly without noticing using their own institutional email to their courses that are currently offered virtually. And in addition to the language cultural learning pathways, we are also offering courses in liberal arts and sciences and entrepreneurship at the moment. And this is really very important. And I would say that none of this would have been possible without the support of our university leaders, because as I said before, it was actually quite risky to experiment with a prototype very early on after the start of the project. But fortunately, so far, it went well. We were very clear to the students and participants that it was an experiment and that we were co-creating. And so far, so good. And we're currently redesigning the inter-university campus also to scale up in the future. So that brings me to the second achievement we would like to share with you today. It's mentioned before, the European Model Language Policy. The policy document, it was publicly launched a few months ago in September, and it's available, and maybe we can drop the link in the chat later on for those of you who are interested. And we believe with this model language policy, we are contributing to the European Commission's objective of stimulating institutional transformation at higher education institutions, and eventually, if alliances pick up on this, even systemic change. A few words on what the language policy entails. Well, as mentioned before, language is key in all walks of university life, and yet not all of the universities, as far as we know, have a language policy in place. And of course, if you are working together in a language that is not your native language, or if you would like to agree on ways of intercomprehension, as mentioned in the introductory speech, a language policy is indispensable to make sure that everyone who is a member of the academic community knows what is expected and also knows what type of commitment from each of the members is expected when working together. The way in which we decided to construct this is to identify 4 core areas. You can see them here in the square. So that is teaching and learning and research as the academic core business of the universities, but also the elements of governance, which identifies the ways in which we work together within the University of Orleans, and communication, because communication is, of course, the essential channel to bring across the messages in the languages a university commits to. A characteristic of the language policy is that it's flexible and it's possible to differentiate depending on the local circumstances, and that we identified 3 components for each of the 4 core areas. Let's say a minimum requirement, the must-haves that need to be implemented, issues that require decision-making at the highest level or maybe at the decentral level, and also some ideas for modular options that institutions may or may not consider. And also for a successful implementation of the language policy, commitment of the university leadership is essential, because otherwise it's very difficult to realize institutional change. After all of this showcasing of some of the achievements of EPICUR, we've arrived at the concluding slide. We think it's safe to say that EPICUR and multilingualism go well together and the one needs the other. We are very happy that we brought a joint vision and actionable approach to multilingualism to life, and also with regards to language training. Maybe here it's also interesting to mention in the context of challenges that even if in an alliance comprising only 8 partners, there's a huge degree of diversity when it comes to readiness for implementing these institutional changes. This should not let any alliance stop themselves. We think that you should work with a degree of flexibility and use the concept of variable geometry and allow all partners to contribute and to make the change that is institutionally possible, but altogether working towards an end goal. And eventually this will help bringing everyone to the same level. Within EPICUR, we also managed to put very high on the agenda the role that language plays in the European education area of the future, and also how to make a reality of linguistic diversity and accessibility. And here it's maybe important to note that we are also linking to European Commission policies, and have been discussing issues, for example, when it comes to support. One of the questions also of today's session, an issue that we signaled together with other first generation alliances is that there is a need to create access for students to language proficiency tools like the OLS in order to equip them to apply for mobilities, for example, in alliances, and being able to self-assess their language proficiency level and apply for mobilities in a variety of languages. So it would be really good, we believe, if alliances together would discuss these types of issues with the European Commission. And finally, we are very pleased in the case of our project that we managed to bring the strategic strength to life by offering the language learning pathways in our inter-university campus. And we look forward to boosting student mobility even further to higher levels, bigger and better in the next full rollout phase. I think that's all for now. Tiffany and I will be around during the seminar if you have any questions, and we look forward to an interesting afternoon. Thank you very much for your attention.
Well, thank you so much, Anouk. I've got myself a dozen questions that I noted, and lots of things that you said were music to my ears about keeping the humanities alive. And I think ATHENA is going to be one of your first clients to adopt the language policy and so on, modern Greek courses and lots of things we will be interested in. But I'll be disciplined and keep my questions also for the end of this part. And the audience can continue to think about their questions. I'm sure they're doing that. And I'll introduce our next speaker. And actually, I counted yesterday 24 alliances out of 41 have both a German and a French member university. And in 7 out of 41 alliances, these universities are also partners in the French-German university network. That's at least my count. I've heard different counts. So EPICUR and ATHENA are 2 of them. And that's one of the many reasons why we are very happy to welcome Dr. Marjorie Berthomier. She's the Secretary General of the French-German University, which I shouldn't even mention in English, Université Franco-Allemande. Dr. Berthomier has a distinguished career as a lecturer at the University Paris-Descartes, starting in 2000. She was then attachée for higher education and later also attaché for culture at the French embassy in Germany from 2006 to 2017, and in between also director of the Institut Français French Institute in Leipzig, Germany between 2011 and 2013. And now as Secretary General, she leads and oversees the operations of the French-German University, a binational and more than that, international network consisting in more than 100 higher education institutions with more than 180 double degree programs, thousands of students, even more alumni, more than 22,000 alumni working in different academic and economic fields. So Dr. Berthomier is unquestionably one of the leading experts in the development of binational and international integrated degree programs in Europe. And she will share some experiences about the challenges of foreign language learning in these programs. I thank her for her time. I know she's extremely busy with a huge conference coming up this week, and I also thank you for agreeing to express yourself in English for this audience, which is not natural for a French-German university. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, and Frederic, both for the invitation and for the presentation that you made. And this is a bit fast because I don't feel like an expert, and I'm sure I'm not an expert on the matter of languages and foreign languages, but And I have to apologize first for the fact that I won't be able to stay with you after my hopefully brief presentation. We have a very important meeting of our steering committee on this week, and we are fighting for having more means, financial means to enhance the multilingualism in our programs, and that's not so simple as you can maybe figure. Yes, I'm not a specialist of the foreign language questions, as I said, even if we have at the Franco-German University, at the DFH or FGU or UFA, we have to deal with these questions and to face the challenges that are going with using both at the administrative level and teaching or learning foreign languages, what is rather a skill of our partner institutions in our network in order to develop B3 and maybe European international integrated programs. As an institution belonging to two countries of which neither has the last word and no one has the one language or the biggest language as the other, we indeed are working at least in two languages, and I would spend a few minutes of this presentation maybe to explain how we manage to ensure to ensure multilingualism within the Central Secretary at the Franco-German University, and how we work multilinguistically, if I can say so. But I'm sure it's more interesting for you to know how we deal, or better say, how we help our network of HEAs to deal with the fact that Franco-German integrated programs or even European programs which are qualifying our students for the different job markets, ensure that they will be able to work and to live in the two countries or in the different countries, but not only work in English and not only use English for the professional and real life they have to live. Okay, at the first and one hand, of course, the meeting of merging of two scientific and administrative culture poses, as the former general secretary of the FGU pointed out in a quite old article, but still remaining very helpful to think about it. Meeting and merging of two scientific and administrative cultures poses special challenges to the daily activities at the FGU. Not only because the program coordinators have to learn to correctly interpret the culturally specific and maybe linguistic specific curricular didactic views of their partners, and when disagreement arises, they have to be prepared to compromise. To be prepared to compromise has also to deal with linguistic skills, and I'm very aware, and I found very interesting in your presentation, in the former presentation, that this developing this special policy, language policy, is, in my opinion, a very important milestone in ensuring the development of probably of the alliances and of the European alliances. Students and doctoral candidates sometimes painfully learn too that presentations, technique and traditions of structuring scientific papers and the modes of communication between those involved in the learning process are not the same everywhere, and that's another point which I was very pleased of in the former presentation. That's to say, the language has to deal with culture and with scientific culture, and is the multilingualism is in this way a way to ensure pluridisciplinarity and interdisciplinarity. If you are working internationally or binational, you are forced to work interdisciplinary, and if you are working monolingual, I think you or we will be reducing this multidisciplinarity and this scientific diversity, and I think this is a very big issue we have to be aware of. The mixed Franco-German staff at the FGU is responsible for coordinating, administrating the programs, and we are confronted too every day with different styles of leadership, different working habits and methods, and different accounting principles, and like everyone else participating in the working process at the FGU, we are using varying terminologies in the two different languages we are more inherited to use in French and German. And that's to say that not only the DFH management has to be highly sensitive of this carefully balanced system of the parity, but have to develop the way to intercomprehension, to enhance intercomprehension, and the way we make it is paradoxically a way where we wait, or we're forwarding from our colleagues that they are speaking their languages and that they understand, and only understand at the first level the language of the other colleagues and the partner language. And of course it affords translation, it affords traduction, interpretation, and intercomprehension is not so simple as just a linguistic basis, at a linguistic way of dealing with it, but I think this is one of the only ways to go to a more integrative, the most integrative and cooperative possibility to build an international team. Okay, I don't want to be too long. I think this is one part, but this part is by far not so difficult as to ensure that our students, or better say the students, the 6,400 students of our 186 double degree programs can be brought to be fit in the two systems where they have to obtain their double bachelor, master, or PhD. The principle of shaping these programs is that the designing of the programs is free, but is strongly evaluated by within an evaluation process in which both of the academics and both of languages are represented, and it has to be integrated enough to be supported and financially supported by the FGU, and it has to be national, and it has to ensure these programs have to ensure that the students are able at the end of the program to be employable on the both job markets at least. That's to say the shaping, the designing of the program, which is evaluated before the program is, or the programs are supported, have to ensure that the foreign languages won't, I would say, won't be a too big hurdle for the students to work in a partner or in a third country after it. And this is for sure a very big challenge, and maybe bigger becoming challenge for the students nowadays. But we see it, and both, I think, students and their future employers regard it not so much as a problem, but more as a challenge to face with, but a measure of quality. And this very important, I think, that to switch from the difficulty and the hurdle comprehension of foreign languages challenges into the comprehensive way of understand them as a chance and as an added value, and to take the example given by EPICUR. Okay, I'm sure most of the students nowadays are speaking relatively easily English, or hopefully this is so. But I'm sure if they are speaking Greek or speaking Slavonic languages, or speaking even French and German, there is an added value that would be and make the difference. And the difference, what is very important, I think, for transferring and transboarding the European values. Okay. How do we make it possible for our programs to be helped in achieving these challenges? How do we make it possible? When the program has been evaluated, when the programs are evaluated, they can get for their students some licenses to learn the other language, because it's very important to adjust and to give the students the possibility to learn, not only to come with the biggest achievements, C2 level in the foreign languages they have to speak, but to allow them to come over or along the mobility and along their study to the foreign language achievements we want to have them get. We give first this possibility for the students, and this is the first level, I would say, possibility, which has been very interesting during the pandemic, where we have given 600 licenses from Deutsche Uni Online instead of the usual, I would say, 100 licenses which were used in a year before the pandemic. But we give the programs to support financial support to initiate, and which isn't enough to cover, but can help them to initiate the teaching of foreign languages near the core skills that the students have to afford, and this is very important. I think there is a very important challenge and characteristic to pay attention to, in the fact that there are not the same skills. If you want to have a B or a trinational degree, if you want to have a degree in biology or in comparative European law, if you want to have a master in ancient Greek civilization, there won't be the same language skills, of course, that the students have to get. And for that, we are still convinced that, or we are trying to follow the bottom-up principle as a way to allow our network to adjust and to adapt their foreign language teachings to their needs and to the needs of their students. The third way we did it was until this year to have and to propose to our network to candidate to apply to a specific call for foreign language preparation. That's to say, maybe foreign language for the mobility. And this language preparation was given for the programs for 3 years, and we are, but this is such a big administrative work which is relating to this application, to this call for applications, that we are trying now to get it on another way and to ensure it as a possible rate for the possible for the programs to get in a possibly easier way. And maybe to conclude, this is not all these possibilities will not be successful enough if, as the former presenter said, if we are not, or if you are not doing a political work which has to be made to convince, to remind that multilingualism, a core issue for Europe is, and if you are not convinced and declaring and communicate that the language diversity as important as the cultural diversity or as natural biologic diversity is, and I think if we can make it together at a national, at a binational, at a European level, it's great. It will be great, and I'm very hopeful that the French presidency of the European Council will be a possibility to make it maybe true. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you so much, and we absolutely share your hopes for the French presidency. The hopes are high, and I hope the ambition is just as high for our government to defend multilingualism in Europe. I've seen that the discussion has between the first two presentators has almost already started within the presentations. I've taken a lot of notes that we can use later, even if you have to leave. And it's about, thank you for reminding us that it's not just about language, it's scientific culture, importance of governance practices, employability is also an interesting keyword, bottom-up principle, and of course, the political engagement that is necessary as well. But we will keep all this in mind for the discussion later. If you have to fight for more funding as a program and my how do you say that in English? I don't even know. My colleague from Siegen, who's also responsible for our common program, is also in the public. Of course, we want you to fight for more. That's really, really important. Right, but perhaps you can stay with us for well, we've got one more presentation in this part. You still keep your questions in mind. And our third speaker is an expert and university lecturer in strategic management with a focus on the management of higher education institutions, among many other research interests and fields of expertise. For 10 years and until very recently, Asta Radviciene, I'm fine. For me, she's just Asta and a very dear colleague and friend. So for 10 years, she has served as Vice Rector for International Relations, and since 2016, Vice Rector for Strategic Partnership at VILNIUS Technical University in Lithuania. VILNIUS Tech is one of the founding members of ATHENA, and Asta is also the local coordinator for the implementation of ATHENA activities at VILNIUS. VILNIUS Tech has gone very far in internationalizing its education offer, as you will see, with tangible results. And Asta will take us through the VILNIUS Tech journey to create a portfolio of English-taught study programs.
Thank you very much. I hope that you can hear me, and I'm going to ask Virginie to help me with the slides. Thank you, Virginie. I see that it's working. So I'm very, very pleased and happy to be a part of gathering today, representing ATHENA partners and sharing our 25 years long journey towards English taught study program portfolio. As a university, as a small university in Baltics, now we have about 30% of our study programs delivered in English. And I wanted to share with you today our phases, our challenges to very, very different times. And I could describe these three phases. These 25 years could be divided in three very clear phases of our endeavor. And the first phase I would call like a experiment and piloting phase. The next one, mobility focused. And the third one, open collaboration, open university phase. Virginie, if you could skip 2 slides, next one. So the first stage and the first milestones, we started our international education in 1994. At that time, it was really absolutely bold and to a certain extent crazy decision, but this is our way to react to the new opportunities and to new realities. Lithuania regained independence in 1990, and then university around that time was really struggling, looking for new ways how to expand the portfolio activities. But probably one of the major critical issues for us was the state funding, which was lagging behind. And university was looking for all possible channels and new opportunities to diversify the funding sources at that time. And therefore, recruitment of international students and international study programs as the base for that recruitment was one of the ideas of the top management at that time. And they decided that, okay, this idea is good, but also on the other hand, we get very strong support of our Nordic partners who contributed a lot to our growth and development and internationalization at that time. And they had a very, very complex experience of delivering study programs in English, integrating English language into university life. And we thought, okay, maybe we have good expertise at our partner universities. We have our plan, and let's do it. And then very, very top down, the decision has been done, having 99% of the staff with local expertise, very little international expertise, quite limited English proficiency. But the idea was that the institution has to support, institution has to work with the new instruments and just onboard new practices. So the decision was to establish undergraduate program at every faculty we had at that time. It was one undergraduate program per faculty, and that's it. And we had to start. But how to motivate people? How to create a portfolio? So first of all, the management decision was just to encourage them financially, and we had we multiplied their let's say the salaries by 2 times. And that was a good financial incentive to encourage people to gather people around that big task, and also a good chance for headhunting to attract other people at other universities in Lithuania to join this particular, let's say, very ambitious plan at that time. But we were not that good in attracting international students. At that time, our first cohort was only 19 international degree students from Lebanon. So what we did, we decided that if you want to experiment, if you want to pilot, if you want programs to be really developed, we have to have practice. And we invited local students to join English programs, which we run in parallel. And we promised that if that is too tough for them, they can easily return back the transfer, very easy transfer from study programs taught in national language to English taught programs, and the opposite transition was promised to students. And we had the first groups of students who were basically the first target group and the first, let's say, testing group for us to experiment with that. But another important gain of this time was that we got an exclusive competitive advantage at that time, because experience of having quite a large portfolio of undergraduate programs, full degree programs, 4 years in English, at that time was very rare in our region, in Baltics and even in Central and Eastern Europe. So we became a very interesting and attractive partner for many international projects. And that was our chance to increase our international competency, to start a lot of international projects, which became a base of our future mobility action. In 1999, when Lithuania was allowed to participate in Socrates program of that time, we got the first exchange students, and we had 55 students out during the first half of the year in 1990. And these students were the students basically who studied in these English taught programs. So that was our first, let's say, phase. Virginie, can you show the second phase? The second phase, the decade from 2000 to 2011, that was a we had totally different motivation behind. Yes, recruitment of international degree students was still a motivation for us, but the main was expanding mobility, creating the platform for our students, creating awareness for our students that they can study in English, then they are ready to study in English. They are able to cope with the professional and academic challenges in English language. So we continue to keep the platform, to create and to expand little by little. And during these 10 years, we have probably same staff capacities, but the absorbed capacity in general of the institution changed. And we had about 500 local students studying in English. Even that number was increasing, and the studies became more and more popular among local students. We have more or less about somewhere in the middle of this phase, about 2007, 2008, we had about 500 incoming students who were, again, that particular very important group of students using the platform of our international study programs. And at that time, we got our first internationalization strategy, the very strong, let's say, focus on English taught programs. Later, we integrated that strategy into general strategic action plan. So, and we kept the minimum, let's say, KPI for the ratio of English taught programs in our portfolio, about 20%. That was kept for that decade. So we were able to create a platform for our exchange, and it was huge, let's say, gain for the institution of this time. We got also external recognition of this program, of the quality. We got first ECTS label in 2006. We got a European DS label. We managed to complete European University Association institutional evaluation. And all these steps, they were basically confirming that our way is, that we have very strong background, and we have very strong platform of teaching. So that was the phase of maturity. That was the phase for us to shift, to get more awareness, to shift from Euro-centric strategies to more global strategies. In 2009, we started our cooperation in South Korea, Malaysia, Taiwan, Latin America, and every partner was looking for more opportunities. One faculty was not enough at that time. They were looking for the partner who can provide an opportunity to mix and match very different subjects, different programs, and create broader portfolio for exchange. And that was our mobility for staff, for students, having really big critical mass at the university to create internationalization at home opportunity for the students who were non-mobile. 90% of the students were non-mobile at the university at that time, but that was, again, a big, let's say, source for information, for inspiration, for gathering their international experience. And now I'm approaching to the very last decade of the university. And Virginie, we can move right now to our next slide. So I'm talking about the very last decade of our university. Now, as I mentioned, we have about 30% of our study programs delivered in English. And now the rationale behind is we want to be an international open university able to collaborate, able to integrate in the most seamless and the most efficient way with our partners. We understand that university is a borderless university. So the better we integrate the elements provided by our partners, by international business, by universities abroad, by our partners of consortium, the more, let's say, the more pieces provided by them we integrate into our academic life, the more integrated, the more seamless that integration is, the more complex is student experience, the more complex is university life in general. And in this decade, we managed to legally coordinate, let's say, the students' willingness to join English taught programs, because now we included into university student contract a small sentence that the university can provide English taught studies whenever the university thinks it's necessary, whenever the content requires. So we have, let's say, official permission of our students, of our local students, to switch to English whenever we want. So therefore, almost every course, not only courses delivered in English, but also courses provided in Lithuanian language, they also have that international part. They have visiting professors, they have visiting staff members. So we now we are able to have about 12% of our student body international. We would love to have more, but probably the two recent years changed some ambitions quite significantly. But I think that this is still a very important part and very important feature of our university. We have a lot of interest and a lot of enthusiasm at the faculty level to continue. Maybe motivation of staff is a question. Virginie, can you switch to the next slide? Because I have challenges today. So our challenges today are the size of the portfolio, launching new programs, because sometimes there is more enthusiasm than the resources behind. And we also have to rethink our strategy about quality of the teaching. It seems to be a very natural process for us, but then checking quality control, reality check is very important, because we see the difference. New students, the new entrants of university, they come with very good English language skills, and then sometimes the English proficiency of staff is lagging behind already. And we still don't have formal requirements for English proficiency for staff when we hire them. We have that gentle and soft approach towards HR. And we have quite limited local student motivation to study in English because they have so many single courses or lectures, single lectures offered in English that they don't see that as a benefit anymore, as an exceptional quality element or exceptional academic experience leading to more successful career. So that is our challenges for today. But I would say that doesn't matter what was how many challenges we have right now. I think every step we did in that direction was absolutely worth to do. And Virginia have the very, very final slide as a call for action to all the universities and colleagues. We know how many challenges we have. Legislations in different countries are sometimes not too super friendly to English taught programs, just to say politely. But we have to have our motivation behind, and it might be very different. But I think that the idea of internationalization at home, providing international experience to everyone, or the idea of being open, being more collaborative, being borderless, is a very, very critical for the universities today. And I believe that English taught programs is one of the potential and very strong instruments towards that. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Asta. A lot of information in a compact format. It's really absolutely great. What I see in all these three presentations is actually 3 points that they have in common. It's ambition and boldness. I think in everything we've seen in these 3 presentations, there's an element of strategy. You can't just walk into this and improvise, but there's also a lot of flexibility and adaptation, and that's something I see in all 3 examples, EPICUR and even though we are, and the French-German University and VILNIUS TECH, although we are on different timescales. Asta talked about 25 years. French-German University celebrated its 20th anniversary some time ago, and EPICUR, and like all alliances, is new. But these points, it's something that you have in common. I know we are probably running a bit late, but people are used to my running late. And I'd like to open the discussion a little bit, at least right now. We've got one question in the chat, and it's specifically for Asta, but I think it's for everyone. It's actually when you have this transformation of institutions going on. One of the key points is really staff. And it's actually, I was also thinking about recruitment policies. I suppose that's part of the language policy developed by EPICUR as well. But we've got a question from our colleague Hervé from Orléans about the early stage at VILNIUS TECH. So apart from the financial incentive, which is really impressive, doubling the salary, who can afford that, did you also provide specific classes for professors, for teachers, for lecturers to improve their English level, or were they just supposed to learn it by themselves?
Yeah, definitely, yes. Yeah, financial measures. At hard times, we had hard measures, you know. Yeah, but language support was always offered by the university. But I have to say that nowadays, we provide the courses, we do anonymous testing for staff members. So no one except the dean can see real results. Staff members are invited voluntarily to take the test for the institution to know what might be the problems connected to specific study programs. And if we see that the problem is somewhere, then we offer the training. But I have to say that internal training is not very let's say, not very popular, not very, let's say, attracting to our colleagues. Maybe because, and we invite external, let's say, training leaders. It's not that we are using same people just to avoid some, let's say, sensitive issues about being a professor and being taught by, I don't know, the colleague from another department, you know, all these academic tensions. We even having external colleagues who deliver trainings per year. We have about 10, let's say, classes of different level. Basically, this is C1, C2, and also we have for beginners to encourage the admin staff or some people who are probably not teaching in English, but they want to communicate with students, they want to be more integrated. So, but I wouldn't say that, yes, we offer, and we had a period when we had it for free. We had a period when people have to pay a very, very symbolic, let's say, fee for it. But people tend to get training outside.
Yeah, that's really interesting. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's also a psychological aspect of a teacher being taught, and yeah, it's really interesting to think about. Marjorie and Anouk, would you like to address this issue, perhaps the wider issue of, you know, transforming institutions and what you do with the staff, and is, but on the one hand, it's recruitment. So what are your recruitment policies in terms of language qualifications? And on the other hand, well, you have to deal with the staff that is already there when you transform. And for EPICUR, you talked a lot about these very interesting student offers, but offers for staff, perhaps, who might also want to. It's something that happened to us in ATHENA, that we started to offer language courses. We're going to talk about that later. And it's the staff who actually thought, well, I want to have this class as well. And so maybe if you want to address those questions. Perhaps starting with Marjorie, who must be.
I have to say we made the multilingualism as a part of the recruitment policy. You told it, we are 20 years old, and that's to say from the very beginning on, we were recruiting people, colleagues, speaking both French and German, and we are ensuring since, I would say, 10 years maybe, that the heads of the different departments can develop and make their English better with the course what we pay. That's one point. I wanted to say, I think even for the people who are working since 20 years at the Franco-German University, I think the fact that they are working in different languages and with different languages is a very big factor of motivation, and allows, I think, allows that this motivation remains. Despite of the long time and maybe of the not always such exciting aspects of the administrative work. Maybe this is not so simple, not so easy to find some some informatic computing people, developer who are able to speak French or to understand French and German, and we are working also with them in English. if there are two common languages, French and English or German and English. And of course, we have to be able to develop the possibility, the language possibility of the staff. And we would be open, or we are very aware that within the network, this is a big issue for the responsible for the programs coordinators to speak the other language and to learn the other language. And this is very important at this point, not only to improve their English level, but also the different language levels they will have to use for the future, for ensuring that the diversity will be told and taught as a model, I think, from this coordinator too.
Excellent, very interesting. Yeah, I didn't think about English still being quite a big topic at the French-German University as well. But yeah, it's inevitable. But you're flying the flag for keeping French and German alive and doing such a great job. Yeah, yeah, motivation, absolutely. That's a really good argument. And Anouk, I know for European University Alliances, recruitment of common staff, it's a big topic and it's not resolved. But you're 1 year ahead of us in ATHENA, so maybe you've got a policy already in place or practices in place for EPICUR staff, new EPICUR staff and old staff.
It's a very ambitious question. The short answer is not yet. We don't have a joint recruitment policy in place yet. This could be something that we need to probably lay the foundation for in the full rollout application, because it's something to think about going forward. But maybe an initial step is to think about harmonizing ways when it comes to specific requirements for future staff members who will be involved, for example, in the EPICUR teaching offers and research. Maybe I'm wearing two hats here, because I was triggered also by Asta's very fascinating presentation from the institutional point of view. And as my role of international director here in Amsterdam, it got me thinking, because our situation is so different from yours now at the moment, where we're sort of having to deal with an enormous influx of international students, to the extent that we actually reached our maximum absorption capacity and don't know what to do now. So that is maybe something to think about on the horizon, and something in my own country, the Netherlands, that has become mandatory by law is actually a fixed minimum level, language proficiency in either English or Dutch when teaching courses in academic context, and that should be at least the equivalent of C1 proficiency level. And this is something that is, of course, met with some resistance by especially people who have been working for a longer time at our institution, as you can imagine. But it's very helpful, because it gives you something very concrete to work on, and especially in your recruitment policy. So back to your question, this is something you can steer in the process. So it's also an opportunity. And I think for alliances, it probably will not work to introduce mandatory standards at once. But I would say that maybe thinking about some sort of harmonized set of criteria that you would commit to on a voluntary basis when it comes to language proficiency in English, but also in the local language, or the fact that future lecturers need to be fluent or be able to teach in at least 2 languages. One of them could be English, another one could be one of the EPICUR languages, might be something to think about to sort of harmonize that process. But I think it's a little bit of a give and take, so to speak, because you also would like to create buy-in from the existing staff members. And then it's always a bit more difficult to introduce new measures coming from the alliance. But I'm sure you're aware that this is basically missionary work. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I like that image. Missionary. Yeah, absolutely. That's what it is. So Asta needs to get ready for a fourth phase of having more international students than they actually plan for and wish for. Very, very short question. And it's also a transition to the second part, and we'll have a general discussion afterwards anyway. But you both mentioned the Marjorie and Anouk, the success of online language classes in this pandemic situation. And we also, well, everyone has experiences now with online teaching, and in particular online language teaching, where it's all a lot about interaction so I heard there was a huge success in both cases, so more people, students signing up than before. But what about dropout rates? Because that's to me, it always seems to be the sort of the inconvenient part of this online experience among us. So if you have any experience about that.
I would say we only know that more 600 students have used this license and signed it. But to know what they exactly achieve, this is another point. And I think I spoke about the evaluation from the design of the programs, and we put some added value, or the evaluators put some added value if the outgoing situation, language situation of the students is certificated. And this certificate is, in my opinion, a very big, it's very important to know what you are doing with, and at which level you, which level the students achieved. Voilà.
Yeah, right. Okay, so you've got the certificate at the end, and that's the.
This is one point. The other, on the other hand, the experience what we made was that it was very important for the students as well as for the coordinators to stay connected, and not only with teaching and not only with a license and not only with digital tools. They can help to prepare or to post prepare the mobility or the return of the mobility, and to maintain the language skill achieved during the mobility. But they have to be, as each, I think, as everyone knows, they have to be blended learning models, and not just only digital, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. Anouk, is that also a path that you took at EPICUR, blended learning for your language courses?
Not yet. We were actually planning to introduce more hybrid and blended formats, but now that the pandemic is taking another unexpected turn, it is uncertain whether this can be implemented at any short notice. But maybe coming back to your question with regards to the success rate, this is indeed, I think, an inconvenient truth for many alliances, especially those who are a bit further along, because we are expected to sort of lower the threshold for participation by a larger pool of students, and we have done so quite radically within EPICUR, hence the result of so many applications from people with a completely different background. But then you encounter the issue of supporting and guiding those students with very different profiles. And that is much more difficult compared to what you would usually do in your institutional context. And I think the online environment and natural restrictions that come along with that make it even harder. because students, of course, are, well, I'm not sure that they are aware of the ways in which they can reach out to us when they encounter challenges. It's more difficult in an online environment. So we are now discussing this very issue in EPICUR, and it also goes for the other courses we are offering, that we see that students struggle. Once they are in, they need more support, and we need to figure out what it is that they need, or maybe if we still need to sort of tweak the admission criteria, maybe that is also a solution. So this is work in progress, but I really think that this is essential going forward, because if you get as many students in as possible, you also need to be able to give them what they need.
And if I can add something, I find this is a question of motivation too, because the motivation to learn a foreign language is to meet, or is enhanced through the meeting of other people, and the real meeting, I think, and not only the tandem digital meeting, even if it can help. It can help.
All right, well, very interesting, and I think we'll have more contributions to that topic in the second part, which is, and we'll still have discussion time after that. And so our second part, and there are some of our speakers.
I have to leave.
I know. Thank you so much for coming and staying for so long, and keep up the good fight for the funding. So in our second part, it's about creative approaches to language learning, and our first speaker in this part is my colleague, Dr. Maryse Grovec from the University of Orléans. She's an associate professor in language science and a member of the Orléans Linguistics Research Group, Laboratoire Ligérien de Linguistique, where she co-leads a research team working on a very interesting socio-linguistic project about the types of French spoken at Orléans for the past decades. And Marie is also in charge of a master program in linguistics and specialized in French language teaching for foreigners. And above all, since 2019, she's the director of our French Institute at the University at Orléans, and that's an experience she will share with us. I should also mention that her own university education was at least bilingual, because she's got both a French and a German doctorate from the German one from one of the member institutions of EPICUR, Freiburg. So, and I also thank her for agreeing to speak in English for this audience.
Thank you, and thank you for having me. As you said, English is not my strong language, but I will do my best. I will share the screen, and you tell me if it's okay. It is good?
Perfect for me.
Okay. Thank you. Thank you very much. So, as you said, my name is Maryse Grovec. I am the director of the French Institute, and I will present this institute today, giving a focus on what we do to adapt our offer to different needs, as the title reflects, and to promote French as a foreign language in different forms. I will develop, for that purpose, concrete teaching strategies we apply, and this will reflect also one aspect, in my opinion, of a double policy of our university, namely, on one hand, to enhance proficiency in English and to develop English taught programs, and on the other hand, to promote the local language, namely French, which is also an international language. So I will develop 6 points. After a short presentation, I will talk about the quality approach we have at the French Institute. I will also say a few words about our course offer and about our teaching philosophy, and then talk about the link we maintain to higher education and research before I do some concluding remarks. So, the French Institute is also the learning center of French as a foreign language of the University of Orléans. It was created in 2007 So it's been nearly 15 years. I'm coming after a previous director who was in charge of developing a lot of things. So I thank him also for the whole work he did in that time. The French Institute is a part of the university. It has its own organization, which means that it is not a part of any faculty, but a service at university level. Its mission is to participate in the international strategies of the university through teaching French as a foreign language to an international public, whether it is whether students who are registered in all faculties at the university, or also for international partners we have. To achieve these missions, the Institute has a staff totaling 9 teachers and 4 members of our administrative team, including a full-time teaching engineer. You see here the course manager, Amandine Béranger. And as I said, we provide any kind of support for teaching French at university level for the faculties, but also for international partners. Since 2008, the Institute is accredited with the quality stamp Français Qualité Langue Étrangère. This is a label which is delivered by 3 ministries in France: the Ministry of Higher Education and Research, the Ministry of Foreign Affairs, and the Ministry of Culture. And this ensures the quality of the offer considering 4 criteria, namely the programs by themselves, also the teaching team receive an assessment. The third criteria is the reception of the students, the way we accommodate them and the way they are hosting, the location, and also the administration. So let's come to the teaching offer itself. Since the creation of the Institute, we developed a wide course offer for meeting a diversity of learners' needs. The main offer is the University Diploma in French Studies, the UEF, which is a 4-month intensive program. The organization of this diploma is in 1 semester. So in 1 semester, the student can graduate with a degree according to the scale of the European framework. We also have short immersion programs like summer schools, or also tailor-made programs for our partners. And the third big main activity is the general French support for international students and researchers in form of evening classes. Some few words about the short programs, because we have this main offer about in a semester tempo, but we also have shorter programs like this summer school we offer every year. This is a 4-week program gathering students from all over the world, and they can this is in June and July. In addition to language courses, we organize also touristic and cultural visits, as well as sports and social activities, and this is a popular offer we have. So some words also about our tailor-made programs for groups from the same university. We offer, according to the needs of one specific university, a program in form of 2 weeks intensive program or 3 weeks intensive programs or more. And the students can practice French in class, but also discovering the cultural heritage of Orléans and the Loire Valley. And they share also the daily life of their host family. And this is also a very popular program because they they appreciate a lot to be several weeks with the host family. Also, a few words about some specific program we got to develop in the last few years. For instance, to adapt to new challenges related, for example, to the pandemic. We designed specific programs online for specific needs, for example, for our partners from Japan, China, and Korea, but also for the American zone, the American continent. It was a success, but I would say with a limit, because our partners, especially from Japan, China, and Korea, they are very, very eager to come back to Orléans and have a stay here. So it was a good solution for the pandemic context, but I think that the students are very interested in traveling and staying abroad. We also created a few years ago a new program for the inclusion of refugees. This is a university diploma in form of an intensive language program designed for their specific needs, such as knowing better the university context and the graduation programs, and developing academic skills in order to apply them in a bachelor degree or for a master's degree. They can attend, they receive in the framework of this program an individual support for preparing an academic or professional project with a supervisor. This is a specific dedicated supervisor for refugees at the University of Orleans. And they can also attend workshops for professional integration together with our dedicated service at the University for Orientation and Integration, professional integration. So you had an idea of our main offer, and we are eager to adapt our offer depending on the needs of the partners or of the students, and this is emergent. So some words about our teaching philosophy, which is, in my opinion, very important, and I am very grateful to my course manager and teaching engineer, because she brings a lot of good ideas in the activities of the French Institute. We are promoting current teaching methods, such as a task-oriented teaching. As you can see here, this is an example of what our B2 group made this semester, and other groups semesters before. They participated to a radio workshop, and they produced their own broadcast that you can hear if you follow the link here. Maybe we can drop it on the interaction. The training also aims at discovering, of course, the cultural heritage of the Loire Valley, but also of the whole area and of France. This is made in the classroom, but also outside the classroom through excursions we organize every semester for our students. As you can see here, we make excursions to the Loire Valley. This is our very our main goal, but we also bring the students to Paris because it's so close, and we also bring them to the Mont Saint-Michel because they love this this place. We also promote an interactive way of learning with interactive activities, as well as interactive online resources. What you see here on the right is an online resource which was developed last year by trainees of our center, together with the teaching the teaching engineer, they created an online investigation in the city center of Orléans with the mission to find out who stole Joan of Arc's statue. And it was also very popular by our students through online courses, for our students who couldn't get to come to Orléans. So we encourage, of course, creativity by including several art forms in the teaching methods, such as theater or even creative writing, or also several art forms like design, or you see here photo story. We have very creative teachers, and the students most of the time enjoy those learning forms. And of course, we have a lot of social and cultural events, as you can see here, whether it is online or physically. And we organize also workshops, like you can see here, a calligraphy workshop a few years ago. So, and finally, one of our main goals is to provide training for the students so that they develop skills for academic purposes. And we are also eager to develop resources for that purpose. And we collaborated within our network of university centers to make a common online resource, which is called, here you see, Envol, for étudiants nouveaux venus objectif langue. You see here an example of one of those modules. They are offering some activities where the whole resource has 30 modules, but the main goal is to discover the university context, and to develop first academic skills. So regarding to the link to higher education and research, we can mention at the university level the role played by the Institute in supporting French learning, whether for students or a researcher. We provide through the university diploma the required level for students to apply for bachelor or the master's degree. We, as an example, I can mention also specific pre-university training program we are part of together with the Technology Institute. This is a one-year training program for French as a foreign language, and also for French for specific purposes like engineering sciences. And the students get the B1 or B2 level at the end of the year, so that they can apply for those curriculum. We also provide any kind of courses for researcher or PhD students, and some of them are of higher level, but also we offer introductory courses for French or French culture for beginners within research summer schools, for example. And we currently we are also part of a forthcoming excellence project in sciences that will be offered, should be offered in English, but as I said, we are also eager to include French language and culture programs as part of the curriculum. And in that perspective, the French Institute is also part of the reflection to set this program. So, and I should mention also that we have a close collaboration with the Faculty of Literature, Languages and Humanities, not only with the student clubs and events allowing the meeting of international students and French students, but also I can mention that the Institute is also a good training environment for the master's students in education and teaching French as a foreign language. We receive every year several interns. They are supervised by some of our teachers, or also by the teaching engineer, and it's a very fruitful experience for them. So, and finally, we cooperate in the research seminar on linguistics and teaching by inviting speakers according to the training needs of our teacher sometimes, or to the current topics in research in linguistics and teaching French as a second language. So as a conclusion, I can say that the strength of the Institute is its capacity in providing a wide and adaptive offer, and this is possible through the members we have through a team, including a full-time teaching engineer. I insist on that because she is doing a very important job, and we can also we have the support of a full-time administrative member. And I should thank also the team of the teachers, because we have a very cohesive team and they are doing a good job. As a liberalized center, the French Institute is a good tool for the university to promote French and to create an international network. However, we should consider some points of attention, such as the economic model needed to support it. And I should say that the university is a very good support for the French Institute. And I should also mention that the actual context is not ideal for our activities, because the pandemic put a brake on international activities and mobility. But we are hoping, well, we are still confident that we will have interested students in going on with French learning. Thank you very much for your attention. Here are our contacts and partners and networks.
Well, thank you so much, Marie. And we are going to put the link to the podcast in the chat for those who want to improve their French or learn some French. So, yeah, and I absolutely confirm that the French Institute is one of the, I don't even want to call it a tool, it's a sort of a jewel in our international strategy at the university, and part of all the bigger projects that we develop on the international level. Please prepare your questions, because like in the first part, we'll continue with the speakers, sorry, and because we're running a bit late. But as it's interesting, I think that's probably not a problem. And our next speaker is Merle Bollmann. Merle is part of the ATHENA team at the University of Siegen, Germany, where she works as an international coordinator in the areas of education and internationalization. She acts as a link between the ATHENA team and other administrative units and divisions, such as the International Office, the Student Services Division, and the Language Center at the University of Siegen. So we are staying more or less in the same domain as we just talked about. And Merle's interests lie especially in fostering intercultural knowledge and understanding, as well as creating an inclusive offer for students, researchers, and staff. She's got a background in European studies and has studied actually herself in the Netherlands, Germany, and France. And one of the initiatives she started is an online language café for ATHENA students, and then that's an idea that we have all been immediately enthusiastic about, and something she's going to present to all of us now.
Thank you very much, and I will just share my slides with all of you. Yes, welcome everybody to my short talk about improving language skills outside the classroom, the example of an online language café, which is actually a case example of an informal learning offer. We will today look shortly at what is a language café. Then I would like to introduce to you the initiative, the Language Café of the University of Siegen. And we'll have a short look on the conditions for success of such an initiative. And in the end, we will have a look into the future. The LCafe is somewhere like an airport to me. Everybody is from different countries, all sorts of languages are spoken, and all this makes the atmosphere so special that El Café seems to be anywhere but Japan. This is not a quote from me, of course, but it is a quote from a student from Japan, and I found this quote in an article about online or language cafes. It doesn't have to be online, and I think that it really grasps the atmosphere of a language cafe. For those of you who do not know what a language cafe is, we will now go shortly into this. So what is a language cafe? As the sentence says here, and it's a nice description, it says a language cafe is a sociable event where people can practice their language skills in an informal and relaxed environment with native speakers. It is about learning a language without attending formal classes. And therefore, the language cafe qualifies as a so-called social learning space. In a social learning space, students can come together on a voluntary basis and exchange ideas, ask questions, and study all kinds of materials, no matter who they are or where they are. Language acquisition here happens rather through interaction than through formal knowledge acquisition, as the focus lays on social aspects. A social language space, therefore, is constituted of spatial elements and human agents, and it is a complex and dynamic ecosystem with the possibility for metacognitive development. So how does this fit to the language cafe of the University of Siegen? The language cafe of the University of Siegen has been an offer for quite a while from the language center of the University of Siegen. It has always taken place in a physical format. Actually, the picture you saw on the other slide was a real picture from the language cafe of Siegen. But unfortunately, due to Corona, or could I say luckily, the language cafe is recently taking place in an online format via Zoom. And this gave ATHENA the possibility to actually broaden the language cafe. So right now, students not only from the University of Siegen, but from the whole ATHENA consortium are able to take place in this language cafe. The language cafe at the University of Siegen, or the whole ATHENA language cafe, so to say, takes place every Wednesday from 6 to 8 CET. This we have to stress, as theoretically also people from other time frames are of course welcome to take part. It takes part, of course, in an online format. We're using Zoom, and it is currently limited to 20 people. You have the possibility to speak languages such as German, English, French, Turkish, and of course also other languages, which I will go into detail a little bit later. And every language is tutored by a native speaker. The native speakers are actually capable students who are employed by the language center, and they are tutoring the different language tables. The registration is taking place via Moodle for the students of the university and via email for those students from the ATHENA network, as currently there is no online shared Moodle platform. I said that those are the languages that you can speak in any case. This is due to the fact that we have a certain staff of language tutors that are always available, and those are the languages that they speak. However, if you have the wish to speak another language, such as Italian or Portuguese, because Portuguese, for example, is an offer as a formal language class, you can request at the language center those as a wish as a language you would like to speak. Or you can also come with your tandem partner who and then create your own kind of table. It is just important that you have a native speaker at every table available. So the language cafe starts firstly with a welcome round, mostly in English or German, where the pupils introduce each other depending on the languages they speak as their native language. And then after introducing everybody, you go into the different breakout rooms, which are now the different language tables. And there you have small exercises, you have some maybe grammar sizes, but you also have open questions and you have the room for discussion and talks. And then in the third phase, that's the goodbye phase, you come together again with everybody and you play some games and do some quizzes. Just as a short introduction. So what are actually positive outcomes of the language cafe that we have experienced so far? So I clustered them, or try to cluster them, and we can say there's a lot of development. So there are three main aspects of development. The first one is the linguistic development as a regular participation in the language cafe, of course, improves your language skills. It can prepare you for your study abroad, or for example, for taking a language test such as TOEFL. And of course, it can also stress your interest in other languages as you experience other languages being available or being made available. Secondly, it strengthens the intercultural development of the students taking part. Firstly, this is intercultural communication, as there are students from a lot of different cultural backgrounds, and they all have different native languages, and they all come from different study fields. So you are sensible to other people in other languages and cultures. And secondly, it also strengthens the intercultural behavior as it fosters mutual respect for each other, and also students within the different tables and breakout rooms, they're actually taking care of each other, because at the language cafe, people might have a different language level. So they make sure that everybody is included and has enough space and time to speak. And thirdly, in the case of development, there is a lot of personal development and growth visible. For example, students are motivated. They are motivated to learn by other people being motivated. So you motivate people and you are motivated, so vice versa. People also are able to give advice and to get advice from other people on life questions, for example, about how to study and which courses to take. But you're also able to find new friends, and the students are able to express their wishes, as you can always wish for something in the, for example, a certain game or so on. And you learn how to step out of your comfort zone. And of course, students also enjoy the language cafe because it is a lot of fun and entertainment. As I said, it is a social learning space that is set in a different environment and atmosphere than formal classes. And another positive outcome we have experienced, or the language cafe has experienced, is feedback. Sometimes students that are, for example, that want to become teachers in a specific field, they wish for learning a certain vocabulary that might be in biology, that they need to strengthen their knowledge in learning all those terms in a certain field. And then the tutors can take this into account in the next meeting. So this was a little bit on the positive side, and then we come, I don't want to say the negative side because I don't see there is a negative side, but there might be some challenges or questions. So some of the things that are still open in a way is the question about how can smaller languages be made more attractive, and how can we still take care of the target languages while taking into account the tutors that we actually have available. And this is a kind of triangle that we can see here, and also a question of supply and demand of languages. I have a little overview here of the target languages, and as we can see, the main target languages at the moment are main languages within Europe and within the world. So it seems that they are more attractive. For example, with German native speakers, the most attractive languages are currently French and Turkish. And with people that do not have German as their native language, they are really interested in learning German and learning English. But I also have to stress that, of course, this is a little bit biased as we are providing it at the University of Siegen currently, but are, of course, also willing to take other language wishes into account. So how can we make sure that smaller languages are also included, and how can we encourage students actually to request those smaller languages? And another more administrative challenge we have is that sometimes students show up without having registered, or the students register but they do not show up. This might seem a simple problem, but in practice, it is taking online. We have to secure the human resources, and the preparation is made really hard if there is no overview about the languages that wants to be spoken, or about the people who will be there. And the last point are the people themselves. So a lot of people, unfortunately, haven't even heard about the language cafe, especially because it's quite new within the ATHENA network. And also other questions are that sometimes students are not motivated to learn or improve another language, that they do not want to do an extracurricular activity if they do not get credits for it, or they are simply maybe too shy to join because they do not know anyone. So how can it be an initiative like this? How can the language cafe actually be successful? We can differentiate here between an operational level of the cafe itself and a little bit more higher, the institutional level. On an operational level, of course, we have to provide a fitting language offer. We have to provide languages that are wished for. For example, I just recently learned that a lot of people from Orléans would like to join the cafe, but there is currently not listed on the flyer that you can also speak Spanish. So I addressed it, and of course, people can also learn a certain language there. We just have to find the right way how to make it available and how to promote it properly. And this is connected to finding the right staff. As I said, every language is tutored by students who have the background in that language because they are native speakers, and we always have to find the right people to be at those tables. Then we have to choose the right time and place, and as well pace, as the language cafe cannot interfere with major lectures. So we cannot put it in the morning, but have to put it rather in the evening to make it available to as many people as possible and as many people as are wanting to come. And of course, we have to make it public. So we have to spread it all over our media, but also through mouth to mouth. On an institutional level, actually, we need understanding, acknowledgement, and support. So that means that the initiative itself has to be understood and grasped, and it has to be understood as a different but equally important, unique extracurricular activity or extracurricular learning offer. And once we have the support, we see it as, or I see it as, a top-down and bottom-up approach, that in a way it has to be an information and approach cycle. And then on the horizontal level, we have to spread it via ATHENA and disseminate it. And at the same time, also we need to ensure durability. And the language cafe, to have a long-lasting effect, it has to be ensured that the cafe is able to run over a long period of time and not just for one semester. So therefore, human resources and other expenditures need to be secured in the long run. So what does it mean for the future? Yeah, I would like to present lastly some possibilities and ideas. In the long term, we have therefore, I think, to strengthen our cooperations within at least the network and maybe even broader, that we can offer more target-specific languages like French, I just mentioned, like Spanish, excuse me, I just mentioned, but also that we can broaden the language offer to include smaller languages such as Lithuanian or Slovene and Greek that we also have in the consortium. So I propose that we have a roundtable discussion with the heads of language centers or in the institutions involved, or at least with people that are in favor of it, and that we discuss the next steps about how we can proceed this initiative. Furthermore, we could also establish new formats. For example, that when ATHENA is running, we could think about how language, when you have to leave your own university to go to the next one, that you always have to prepare and learn the language of the country you're going to. Like this, we can ensure that small languages are taken into account. And then lastly, we can have some events to spread the information and think about new ways about how to make the smaller languages also available. So thank you very much for listening. And I would like also to say thank you to the Language Center of the University of Siegen for the help.
Well, thank you so much, Merle. Very, very interesting. And it's a new initiative for us in ATHENA. And we've got questions coming in the chat, but we'll stick to our plan, even though we are running late. At first, we said we'll run until 5 and we shortened it to 4, which was maybe a mistake. But we've got our next speaker now. He's also very involved in ATHENA. We all benefit from his valuable and thoughtful contributions almost every single day. And in many ways, Mladen Kraljic is the embodiment of multilingualism. He's a true European of Croatian origin. He spent his childhood and youth in Germany, and I can testify that his German is completely accent-free, which I'm very jealous of. In Germany, it's also the country where he graduated in law. And during his study period already, he was involved in several research projects and cooperated in the education and training of mediators and notaries in Slovenia. He worked independently as a certified official translator interpreter, perhaps still does it sometimes. He joined the University of Maribor in 2000 and held various high-level positions in the university administration. He is now the head of the International Relations Department, the institutional Erasmus Plus coordinator, among other responsibilities, as far as I gather. Mladen cooperates in various national and European projects, also dealing with language education and translation studies, so that's very relevant to us today. And under his leadership, the University of Maribor has been and is still partner and coordinator in many European programs. In ATHENA, he is member of the ATHENA office, and he represents the University of Maribor in 3 work packages. And he's going to present a very interesting case study that we are all looking forward to.
Thank you for the nice words. I'm trying to share my screen. And hope to be able to do so.
Otherwise, Virginie can perhaps jump.
I just don't find there's something window 4. Aha, this should be it. Ha! I studied law, but I still managed. Do you see it?
Yes, very good.
Okay. So I'll try to do my best. I would like to start with giving 3 comments to the prior speakers. One is, if you want to have my job, you have to prove that you speak 2 widely spoken foreign languages. This is a job condition. This is regarding, staffing with international staff or internationally educated or international format staff. But, I'm only international relations office, so it doesn't harm the faculties. We have also some data on the online linguistic support, which was mentioned in one of the presentations. University of Ljubljana tested their students and they found out that 75% of the students do in the language test worse than before mobility when they return. So something must be wrong with that, or else I don't know what. Regarding language courses, I learned Slovenian without the language course by living here and doing a lot of mistakes, and some of them still fit to me. But now let's go to the next. Is this my first slide? No. Here. I'm going to speak about the possibility of having an international education with not only English, of course. As a very rarely spoken language, Slovenian is very hard to convince somebody to learn it. I have in some conversation with a diplomatic person in Slovenia, she told me, for 4 years I won't learn a new language. Maybe they should stay for 8 or 10 years, maybe it would pay better. In the end, Slovenia has the guarantee for multilingualism in its constitution already. Italian and Hungarian are official languages in certain regions of Slovenia, and so our university has also an Hungarian language program which is taught as domestic language. So besides the Slovenian, we have in our university also Hungarian taught as domestic language. And by this I would like to start. I would like to show you a case how we had a lot of, I would say for our dimensions, a lot of international students at our university taking 1 year credit studies or master studies or even PhD studies in our university. And the project was named in the Erasmus Mundus program JoinEU Southeast Europe. SE stands for Southeast Europe. And the consortium was led by University of Graz. And our university was one of multiple partners. There were 5 series of such projects. And maybe one specialty of this Mundus project was that it was not a joint degree master program, but each of the universities taught its own master and PhD programs to the international students. So there was no joint degree like maybe one should think. I would like to speak, hopefully not too long, about what this project was, what were the main points from the aspect of multilingualism. And we would like also to project it on other cases. Of course, one of the cases would be the ATHENA Alliance. And in the origin, I wanted to tickle you with some crazy ideas, but regarding also the time frame, I will not have them too much emphasized. So the project series was running very long. It ended in 2017, but the final report was only something is wrong. I don't see the presentation anymore. Do you see my? No, I don't see my presentation.
See it, but it only says JoinEU SEE project series.
Yeah, I don't see my own slides.
Oh,
that's funny. So now I can see it. I'm sorry.
Great.
So there is a text which I took from the homepage of the first of the 5 series. So the first. What again? No, something is wrong.
We can still see it, Mladen.
Yeah, it's my computer. As always, you know, I studied law and the bugs kill me. So the first emphasis was to achieve better understanding and mutual enrichment between the European Union and third countries, because the target audience, as you know, in Erasmus Mundus was non-EU countries, and here the focus was on the Western Balkans. We all who lived in this area are still very aware about the tensions that have some kind of a longer tradition than only the 90 Years' War, but they are very vividly in the memories of a lot of people. And so besides the academic dimension, this project had also some kind of a mission to make the region more integrated and to give opportunity for those students to meet outside their home countries without the background of the memories of the independency wars that were taking place in this area. Of course, in the foreground was mobility on all levels, so credit mobility, master and doctoral, and even some staff mobility was planned. The implementation of the Bologna process reforms was aimed to be facilitated, and there were among the EU partners 2 universities that profited most of the numbers of mobility, and these were, I think it's no accident, the 2 Slavic partners in that partnership, University of Masaryk University in Brno and University of Maribor. And I think this is mainly based on the lower barriers in dimensions of language and also cultural difference, at least based on the history of the last 80 years. In the 5 series, there were a total of 1,200 applicants accepted, but the interest was 7 times higher. And we also needed a good selection procedure to make a fair decision on the students who were visiting us. 1/3 of them, and even in the 5th period, almost 1/2 selected Maribor or Brno. So in the Penta project, which was the 5th one, we had 100 students out of 200 or 230 students in our university. What were the main points of this success? I regard this as a success, because our competitors for these students were universities like Montpellier, like Granada, like Antwerpen, and other universities that are more well known and higher reputed than ours, but still we had some advantages. I tried to put them into 6 points, and I highlight 2 of them. The first is that we were both post-socialist countries, so some kind of how can I name it? A joint suffering was behind us. The Slovenia and Czech Republic speak both Slavic languages, which I think was a very interesting and important point here. Slovenia was a part of the former Federal Socialist Republic of Yugoslavia. It's a name that you don't see so often anymore, but we left the Union without a longer war. So we were not burdened with a lot of ressentiments. So we were a good haven to come to without facing some conflicts from the past. And Slovenia is an EU member state, and at that time it was the only one between these countries. The cost of living in Slovenia are not high, and subsidies for students are available. This is for sure also a big factor of choice. And as a 6th point, the lifestyle and culture in Slovenia is closer to the Western Balkans, more than maybe British, Scandinavian or French. And of course, there's less fear from the unknown. If you have been in the school informed about the Yugoslavia with Slovenia in it and so on, and the language barrier as a Slavic language, as I said, is lower. And here it's not only that the students were able to use English as far as they could it, and they were ready to learn Slovenian, but they also were able to use their own mother tongues, especially Serbian and Bosnian or Croatian, because the professors knew these from their own school education. So if you were not able to tell anything in Slovenian or English, you could turn to your home language and the professor would understand you. This was also a big advantage, especially when it went to administrative procedures where the staff is not so language proficient like elsewhere. How could we use the benefit or the experience from JoinEU SEE in other cases? I'm sure that French is also spoken outside France. I know it for fact, and this could be a special item as a regional aspect, or in the case of the part strategy. That countries could be targeted because students there would have a natural affiliation to French. The same is valid for Portuguese or, for instance, for Spanish. All these languages are also a language group like Slavic languages. And of course, in the national strategy of Slovenia and also in the strategy of our university, we have a special regional emphasis on Slavic languages. And of course, if we are able to attract students from there, we also have the self-confidence to confront them with Slovenian. And in that matter, we see here also a good protection and projection possibilities for our other ATHENA partners. I'm sure that in Vilnius there's also a lighter access to the Slavic-speaking area than maybe to Scandinavian or others, or even there it could be good connections to the Scandinavian area, not only geographically but also in other aspects that would help the students to lose their fear of the unknown and to take this decision to go somewhere else a little better and easier. And in this way, the universities could attract international students in a high number because all of these areas are very highly populated, and they could uphold teaching in languages other than English, of course, with the support of English in certain aspects where you would have to bridge some difficulties between the different language routes. What would be advantages? I can project from Maribor. We were able to teach in a less widely spoken EU language to international students, which of course was lower costs and efforts for the teaching staff. The international students, they widened their horizon and learned some related Slavic language with a lower language barrier than others, but still had this international experience. The integration of international students was less demanding because there was some feeling of being related, being brothers in some way, and everything was a little smoother. The domestic staff was able to practice tolerance towards foreign language teaching and use of multiple languages in the process in a less demanding sphere. So a lot of staff members, as I said, they knew some Serbian or they knew some Croatian, and they were able to communicate with the students also informally and easy the whole contact part. And the number of applicants were 700%, so we could have, if there was more funding, we could have accepted much more students. And we estimate that it was the fact that there were the typical fears of students, unknown culture, difficult language, high living costs, and so they were all not present in the case of Maribor, at least. The staff also, I have to say, was more prepared to take those students than other students who were not able to understand Slovenian at all, and they were also not ready to talk in Slovenian. So the staff was less refusing to take this additional effort of the foreign language, and it was easier to integrate those students in the normal lessons and not doing parallel lessons in English for them. And the visibility of our university in the region was upgraded. It had also a long-term effect. We still receive a lot of Erasmus students from these countries, and we expect also for many of them to enroll our postgraduate studies. And a certain part of these students even stayed in Maribor and found a job or continued, if they were master students, continued in PhD studies. So there is a certain brain gain even. Without having a really vast and high number of these. What I would say as a challenges, the visa policy has to be smooth and inviting. We were able to accept so many students in such short time because our country has the national policy of accepting these students easier than maybe students from Taiwan or from Bangladesh, which are problematic countries also on the international scene due to their surrounding. And it is harder for those citizens to get a visa. So it is very important that the state who gives the admission to the student to enter the state has a higher benevolence to the target areas. I think we must not underestimate that in ATHENA. International students have a less broadening experience. This, I would say, if you go to a related language, the internationalization effect is lower. And if you don't go to a totally different culture with different food and everything, the same is a little lower. It's still something international, it's still broadening, but not in a way like those same students would have gone to France or to Germany. And a fact that we discovered is that the international students from less developed areas, they need relatively high grant support. If there was not the grant for 1,000 euro per month, or for PhDs 1,500 euros per month for such students from these countries, it's more than a monthly salary of a higher education teacher. So of course it was attractive to go, but they did not have to spend so much of that scholarship when they were in Maribor than they would have in Montpellier or in some Scandinavian university or in Antwerpen, where they also were. And in the case of the high interest, a fair and swift selection is difficult. In ATHENA, I told about the case of a master study, also in the same Erasmus Mundus program, that had 30,000 applicants for a joint master. Can you imagine to process 30,000 applicants for one study program in 2 months? So it's something that is also a challenge that we have to encounter if ATHENA will be successful, and I think we will be. So we need either to think of a good software to process applications very quickly, or we need more manpower in the enrollment or other solutions. The target countries that are included in the bilateral agreements on cultural and scientific cooperation may be tuition free, so there might be a lack of financial means. What happened to us? We accepted students, for instance, from Bosnia and Herzegovina, and when we wanted to charge them with a tuition that was included in the scholarship, 9,000 euros per year, they told us that Slovenia and Bosnia and Herzegovina has a cooperation agreement on cultural and scientific cooperation, and the students are treated equally like Slovenian students, so their study was for free on master level. And we were losing all of that funding that we could have of them. But we were not financed for those students from our general budget. So also we have to take good care what our target countries are, that we don't run out of the essential means to offer the programs to those target students. I thank you very much for your attention. If you have questions, of course, I will try to answer them. I hope also that it was not too teasing, but for the use of multiple languages, I had some other topics, but I think the framework here is not the proper one to tell them. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you so much. Yeah, looking forward to your teasing and in another framework. And well, I can imagine. I'd like to continue with our next speaker. Before the discussion, we finish with a sort of firework and looking outwards. So our next speaker is looking towards the future, really. So our next speaker is another valued ATHENA colleague. It's Alexandra Sokolova. She's the Vice Director of International Relations Office at VILNIUS TECH, Lithuania, and responsible for strategic partnership development with higher education institutions worldwide. We already saw in Asta's presentation that VILNIUS TECH has a lot of interesting partners all over the world. She's also responsible for strategic planning and performance data analysis. Her main activities include international project development and administration. And prior to this employment at VILNIUS TECH, she worked at the Ministry of Education and Science of the Republic of Lithuania and coordinated the lifelong career guidance area there from 2004 to 2015. So that's also a lot of valuable expertise for us in ATHENA. So with this multiple knowledge and expertise, Alexandra brings a lot to ATHENA and always has innovative ideas that enrich the work of all of us. And her contribution to this seminar is a case in point. So Alexandra will present some smart solutions for everyday multilingual challenges.
Hello. Please allow me for a minute to share my presentation. I hope you can see it.
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So our alliance is a network of 7 European countries, and naturally we speak 7 languages, and as all of alliances, English is our working language. And actually, for preparing the previous slide, I used a simple tool as Google Translate, and I've just entered it in the internet and picked up the right word. It was easy. I could also check the pronunciation of each word, and I'll also edit all of my slides with Grammarly. And I would also like to share with you my personal journey in the multilingual world and the use of a technology. I was born in Lithuania, but my mother tongue is Russian. I started to learn Lithuanian when only at school. Actually, Lithuanian is the oldest surviving Indo-European language and has nothing in common with the Slavic languages. I chose English as my foreign language in 5th grade. And when I was a student, I learned Polish by watching TV first, and then I attended the courses at the Polish Institute. And some 10 years ago, during my previous career path at the ministry, I opted for the French language course at the French Institute. That's why the presentation of today about the French Institute in University of Orleans was, reminded me a lot of my experience. And 5 years ago at VILNIUS TECH, I was offered an opportunity to learn Chinese language. And as you see in this slide, actually the size of the text is representing the level of my actual knowledge and skills. And it's really a pity, but the languages that I do not use in every day and I do not practice, they gradually vanished to almost non-existing, for instance, Chinese. And now English is the dominant foreign language to me. And it is important to notice that most of these languages were learned when modern technologies simply did not exist. No computers, no internet, no smartphones, no applications, no programs, and probably a lot of us will agree with that they also learned these languages without it. But the technologies changes rapidly over time, and nowadays we cannot live without them. I use the tool for editing and translation of text in foreign languages every day, and I'm really curious about exploring new technologies. But it's really interesting, but even if you are not reaching out for technologies, the technologies reaches out for you, because actually today I've received an email from the private company which proposed an interview and meeting, online meeting, and discussing the services that they provide in translation and e-learning, for instance, multilingual translation, dubbing, subtitling, publishing. And this email was a result of my several weeks of preparing of this was a result of several weeks preparing this presentation and Googling information about the e-translating tools, about internet tools and other technologies for language learning and teaching and translating. I'm sure about it. So it's not only Google and Facebook connections with offers that that you find there, but it's also reaches you through the emails immediately. And speaking about the multilingual challenges, they were presented to really and to large extent during the previous presentations, and multilingual policy is a challenge itself. In Europe, as we all know, is promoting English as working language coexists with this preserving of a multilingualism, which is strongly rooted in this essence of European values of cultural diversity. And there will always be a trade-off between effectiveness and fairness when considering multilingualism policies. And that is where human language technologies offer a solution for these challenges. And one of these technologies is software systems designed to handle human language in all its forms, spoken, written, or signed. And they are related to language analysis and production, some semantic technologies, speech technologies, machine translation, and requires the huge linguistic data sets and language resources. And now we all know about the increasing availability of high quality translation and real-time speech recognition services. But when speaking about Europe and the offer of this kind of services and the companies which are working on it, that this really question, how could we compete with such top players as Google and Microsoft, and which are not European, and therefore they may be unfit to address the specific needs of Europe. And that I've learned while preparing this presentation, that language technologies are by definition language-based, and so far as they're related to one language, English, there comes the threats. For instance, I've never heard about the threat of digital extinction, but now I know it. And this is, what is it? It's that regional and minority languages, together with smaller state languages, for instance, as including Lithuania, they're under serious threat of extinction if online content is only available in dominant languages. And digital technologies can also offer a solution, but for that reason, there's a need to constantly gather data, analyze and process it, and create language tools. And I'm not going into details about the EU context. We're all well aware of that it supports multilingualism in different forms. But what I was curious about is how the Digital Europe initiative or platform or trend is supporting this multilingualism. And I've tried to search something, and the first reply that I've got was really interesting to me, because I've came across the project which has started recently this year, and it was a result of obvious support of this digital transformation of Europe. And this project is focusing on developing the roadmap towards European language equality, which main goal is the digital language equality. And again, a new idea, very interesting idea. I've never heard about it, but in terms of the previous, having in mind the previous threat of digital extinction is very important. And this digital language equality is defined as all relevant languages having the necessary support to continue to exist and prosper as living languages in a digital age. And we've heard a lot again today about the university context and the policies supporting the multilingualism, which actually are not in place in many universities. And also what I've learned from a short survey which we had within the ATHENA Alliance, that what it revealed, that there's not a clear understanding of what kind of policy is it, and it's easily confused with internationalization policy. And promoting, for instance, the courses in English language. And all of our countries, they are committed to safeguard and respect natural languages, and it is reflected in national education policies and in legislation. For instance, the policy towards the delivery of studies in state languages, and this regulation are very strict. That's why it leaves a small room for maneuvers and to offering just courses in foreign languages. And there are also some legal restrictions, what I've found about to use a certain computer programs and smartphones in application at the computer at individual universities, which also could be an obstacle to use all these technologies that help us. And some of the provided examples of practices in places at universities were naturally providing studies and courses in English, fair offer of optional foreign language courses for students, organization of language clubs, and a perfect example of University of Siegen was presented today, as it happens in reality. It's also offer of courses for academics who teach in English or in other foreign languages, and entry requirements for professionals, what were mentioned by Mladen before, and requirements for students as an entry exams, and only for some subjects. It's not a total requirements to enter the university with knowledge of one foreign language. And also the issue for some universities is that the administration support purchase of services and tools, for instance, licenses for language translation or editing tools. And also in some universities, there's an availability of other support services like interpreters, editors, or at foreign language departments. There's a lot of questions that I had when I was preparing this presentation. For instance, to what extent do we rely on more traditional foreign language learning or teaching forms? I would ask Merle about whether in these language classes there's some advice on what kind of a tool application to use. Of course, it's all individual preferences and the quality of the app, but is there any thinking behind about the technology in these practices. And are the use of technology encouraged at the universities? And do universities allocate sufficient funding to promote multilingualism? And do we promote research in language technologies in itself, which is a huge area of research? These are open questions. And speaking about the individual context, this short survey reflected that Alliance members, they confirm that they attribute high value to the foreign language skills, and they are ready to allocate time to do so. That also shows the interest in language cafe opening for academic and administrative staff as well, mentioned by Anne before, at least within ATHENA Alliance. And foreign language knowledge is perceived as a great asset and is essential for personal career. But again, the questions there is how much do we use the technology in our application and tools for language learning and teaching in reality at our universities? And are we motivated to use a smart solution and explore the new technologies? Because what stops us is that technologies also fails us. So the applications are not perfect. The Google Translate is not perfect. It's not taking in consideration semantics and some peculiarity of languages, etc., etc. And when we are not satisfied with the service, we don't use this. But this is the only way to improve the services is by using it. Then maybe the way is promising way is just to experimenting and doing research and just perceive it as like we are using it for the sake of improving the tools. Yeah, and I like this quote, that technology is best when it brings people together. We don't have to forget that working together is really brings brilliant results, like social interaction in language cafe, for instance, and technology is not everything. Again, some practical examples of the tools that we do use within ATHENA Alliance every day, and the absolute leader is a word spelling and grammar, which is for free. And on the right hand side of the slide, there's two programs that require subscription and or licensing, is Grammarly, and a little bit more specific program for academics, for academic text editing, is Writeful. And user experience in terms of translation, absolute domination of Google, whether it be on smartphone or phone or in computer. Also, the reverser was mentioned, and on the right-hand side of the slide is DeepL. It requires licensing or subscription to use it, so it implies costs. And the important example of initiative what were proposed by the European Commission is eTranslate. I guess only a few of you are aware of this tool, which is aimed as text translation and used machine learning. But I've learned about it occasionally, and it could potentially become a really powerful tool for translation on EU level. For instance, some legal documents and other types of documents that are produced a lot at the universities and are required for the communication within the alliance. However, this tool has a really complicated access, and in case of universities, the use is restricted to the language departments only. Although the entry point is through the portal on funding of EU, so there is a strange door to this really good tool. And what are the opportunities for us? It very well were presented in the first presentation of this seminar about the policy development, which applies to European University. I'm really thrilled to learn about it, and it's really interesting. Again, speaking about institution, we should really evaluate, do we have a policy in reality? How do we approach it? How do we understand, and how we what are the priorities for us, and what is feasible probably for us at the institution? Because the really serious policies implies funding and resources allocation to implement it in full scope. But in very practical terms, the opportunities for us alliances is thinking about this everyday needs. For instance, the need to have our websites and content in the website in all the language of alliances is a huge challenge. And huge resources required if we will go the regular way, like hiring interpreters to do their job and not using a technology instead. And for the events, if there would be a technology for simultaneous language translation, however far developed it would be, again, it would be really interesting to explore, and we are the great platform to do this exploration, I mean alliances. And potentially we could reduce the cost of translations. And another opportunity for us, the universities, is refocusing and strengthening research in language technologies and developing the new generation of language technologies, and that would help to bring the technology gap between European languages. And institutional policies could imply initiatives to adapt the current institutional frameworks to draw upon emerging technology trends to fit the challenges of multilingual Europe better, while properly assessing the results. And as I've mentioned before, these opportunities require proper funding and consolidation of resources, and of course the sharing of best practices. This is the example of our seminars today, was the sharing of best practices, and really learned a lot from that. And again, a good quote, technology alone is not enough. We are the people that are standing behind the technologies, and everything is in our hands, actually, to make it happen and to make the technology work for us. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Alexandra, as always, full of inspiring ideas. And I know that the time for discussion is not enough. We'll move the discussion and continue the discussion also in other frameworks. And we're going to invite all of you, because there's so many things here that really need to be explored. And I really thank you also for mentioning sign language. It's a big topic in ATHENA, and also something that when we talk about inclusiveness and multilingualism, that's also part of it, sign language and the different European sign languages. I don't want to keep you all too long. I know that my initial estimate of finishing at 5 o'clock was probably better than what we then announced, 4 o'clock. But still, a topic, there are lots of questions about Merle's initiative, about the language café, but before that, there's a topic, two topics actually that come up. It's the use of technology. It was also a question for Merle. It's a question maybe for the French Institute in Orléans, for EPICUR. And what I really see as a thread through all the presentations is something that could be called language equality or language parity. I don't want to call them smaller languages, because but there are languages with less native speakers than others, and with less history of domination and colonization of other peoples, and they're just as important as the others. And so that is something that started with EPICUR, with Greek and Polish and Dutch, well, Dutch and colonization, but and right to Alexandra, who talked about digital extinction as a risk, really, of languages. So if somebody wants to maybe just react to this use of technology in the other contexts and smaller languages. I know Anouk is still with us. And I was really impressed that there were so many people who want to learn modern Greek and Polish and so on. It's really great. But even in EPICUR, there must have been differences in what Merle called the demand, maybe for some languages more than others. Don't know if that's a clear question.
Yes and no. I think what we were quite surprised with was the overwhelming interest displayed by students in, for example, one of our specialization pathways in the South Slavonic learning pathway, which is one of the most popular ones. Same goes for our Finnish learning pathway in the context of Nordic languages. So these are not the usual suspects, one would say. So that was actually very encouraging. So it seems that students from a different disciplinary background outside of the humanities are motivated to invest time and energy in learning these languages, which is great and something to build upon. On the other hand, we have also spent some time in EPICUR in doing research on incentives amongst European students for language learning. And interestingly, the languages that were named spontaneously there did not coincide with the EPICUR offerings so much. But the good news here, I think, for this group is that the top languages were all European. But then excusez le mot, the bigger languages, I would say. So Spanish seems to be very popular, French, German, and not so much the languages that are less spoken. But there is a very clear indication that students are willing to invest time in language learning. And the reason why they intend to do so, as far as we could filter out from the surveys, is very much related to the employability they attach to that. So they see the relevance of wider European language use for their future employment. So that may be something that alliances could, use as an argument, and also maybe we have to improve our communications on this, similar to what STEM areas are already very good at. So I think that would be, so it's a mixed response. In a way, if you ask students spontaneously, they will name, the big languages. But when you launch a scheme like we did in a very unusual area, it turns out that somewhere in Europe, somewhere in some corners of Europe, there are students interested. So you should never stop trying, I would say, but it's also something that maybe ties into the mapping we did earlier with regards to the strength of the different universities. So there must be a link somewhere there as well. So I don't know if this is helpful. I think the picture is still mixed, I would say.
Yeah, employability can work both ways. You might want to have an original profile and learn Finnish, because then you're the only one, or have one of those widely spoken languages. And it's an inspiration to us, because we've got Lithuanian, we've got Slovenian, Greek is probably more widely spoken. And not to give up on them, we had this discussion for the language cafe, and it's definitely a plan to integrate them better as well. I don't want to keep you too long, but Merle, there are some questions about the language cafe. Do you have a policy of recommending technology for the students? What's the role of the tutors, and what's the uptake in ATHENA? If you can perhaps briefly answer these questions.
Yes, just to the question before, because we were talking about the, I do not have another term right now than smaller languages, even though I understand that it's maybe not the best term to use, that within the language cafe, it's not only about learning languages, because for that, the Language Center of the University of Siegen has their own courses, but normally in the language cafe, you need a certain level of a language. And just to make clear that most of the time, these are not beginners. So if you are interested in really learning Finnish or Japanese, even, for example, they have the specific courses. So the language cafe is really something a little bit different from the basic courses, level A1, A1 minus, where you learn the basic of a language, just to make this clear for everybody. So the question about the role of the tutors. The tutors, as I said, are native speakers. They are students employed by the university. They are really capable. They have a certain background also in teaching, or the course or class in it. So it's not just random people teaching there. And it really depends. For example, sometimes it's only to help out when there is a stop in the conversation, and sometimes they motivate people. So I would say it really depends on the situation they are in. And for example, if they are doing grammar exercises, of course, then they would correct the grammar mistakes, but in a running discussion, they would not always correct the mistakes, but it also sometimes depends on the teacher or the tutor you have, because some might take more importance in it and some less, but the focus is more on getting the thing running, and also sometimes that they take themselves back and focus more on the discussion that is going on. And to referring to Nuno's question about how well adopted it is, so we have intake from the ATHENA network, but it could of course be way bigger and way more. So we encourage everybody from ATHENA to send out the information once again so that we can welcome even more students. Also, as to clarify, I said we the whole time. We, that means I am the cooperating partner, but me, myself, I'm not working in the language center. And I just saw that Nuno had another question.
Nuno, do you want to take the floor? Or was it a mistake that you raised your hand?
And there was, I think, one question to technology. Maybe you can quickly repeat it, please.
If do the tutors recommend tools more than others, or are they instructed to recommend translation software? Or...
Okay. Actually, this I would have to ask. This I don't know, but I know that they sometimes refer to certain pages where they have online exercises, and I think there are even online exercises at the university webpage themselves, so where they can train and practice.
Yeah, we mentioned the quizzes as well. Virginie, maybe you can unmute Nuno. Maybe we've gone too far with our control of the participants.
Yes, now I can. I hope you can hear me. So yeah, it's a very fast question for both Merle and Alexandra. It was nice to hear Alexandra mentioning sign language. And the question is, in fact, as you know, in ATHENA we are working on sign language, and we did a training for some deaf people about one course on international sign that we are preparing last week, and all the people were very curious to learn this international sign as a simple, let's say, sign language that we can use even to promote people that are not deaf hearing people to learn some ways of communicating the basics with deaf people. So the question to Merle was if she thinks this might be also interesting to have such type of courses or such type of initiatives in this language cafe in the near future. Thank you.
Yeah, I think that's a really interesting question, which I cannot answer right now by myself. As I said, I am not the head of the language center, but I could imagine that would be an offer that might be interesting. Oh, I just see that Hubert Roth wants to say something, yeah.
Otherwise, because it's late, maybe you want to write your question in the chat. I know it's a long conversation that we're going to continue in ATHENA and with our partners and other European University alliances. Just some concluding words. The European Union motto is united in diversity, and language practice and language policy are among the best illustrations of this European specificity. We have to find a balance that reconciles the two principles, unity and diversity. And nobody wants Europe to be dominated by one single language and lose all the linguistic richness that is so characteristic of our continent. But it makes little sense to demonize English, which is paradoxically our most inclusive working language at the moment, until we find better solutions. So we have seen a number of inspiring possibilities in this seminar. The discussion is going to continue. As I said, this is only one seminar in a series. You will be able to find the recordings on the YouTube channel, on the ATHENA YouTube channel. I hope this recording worked for this workshop, because otherwise I'd be really frustrated. The first seminar on digital innovation from the University of Maribor is already there on the ATHENA YouTube channel. The next seminar will take place on the 14th of December, a week from now. It's hosted by the Polytechnic Institute of Porto, the coordinating institution of our alliance, with the title that you see here, Legal Frameworks for Effective Cooperation, What Can Be Done to Speed Up the Transformation of Higher Education in Europe. It's very much about recognition of virtual and blended mobility, where ATHENA is going to floor a proposal. So thank you again to our speakers, to the seminar participants for their contributions. We hope to see you at next week's seminar, and then at the final roundtable event on 28th of February, where we will draw conclusions from these 4 seminars and make propositions for the future development of European universities. So stay safe and healthy, and thank you all very much again for your presence and your patience.